Over the next few weeks on the channel, we're digging into this dot cells technique, super powerful VBA technique that a lot of people just don't know about and they're not using it. And we've got some simple tutorial videos, 5 or 10 minutes long, mixed in with some longer application videos, maybe half an hour to an hour. I really encourage you to try to do both of them, the simple one and the application videos. Those application videos are going to help you find your own applications for dot cells. So with that said, we are looking at an application in this video. The download file, as always, is available on the website, link below this video. Download it and work along with me. And we had a great comment here from Hugh. Thanks, Hugh, for the comment. And you can see what he's trying to do here. He's got data, first column, rows 1 to 5, 3, 2, 6. He wants to pick out every 6th row and then move the row, move the contents of the cell somewhere else, and then to delete the rows he's not using, delete the rows that aren't every 6th row in this data set. This is what we're trying to do. We're going to apply the dot cells technique to get this done at the click of a button. And this is the really critical point of VBA. This is why it motivates me so much, learning VBA. We can get this done at the click of a button without VBA. This is one of those very manual tasks. Selecting cells, deleting rows, it's going to get frustrating. It's going to make you think there must be a better way. There is a better way with VBA. So with that said, let's get onto the data sheet and let's get started with this task. Now, the first point, as always, I'm sorry to disappoint people, but I don't just open the VBA editor and get into the coding first. That's not the best thing to do. The best thing to do is take a step back and try to think more conceptually about how you're going to do the task. What are the steps you're going to have to go through? Clearly, the first step is for us to identify every 6th row. So let's just try to do that first. We're going to use dot cells to help us. So developer and Visual Basic, and then insert and module. So we've got a brand new module here. Option explicit, that helps us avoid mistakes with spellings of variable names, things like that. So it's good practice to put that in. And then a new routine. And then let's just call it something like do analysis, because we're doing some analysis. That's an informative variable routine name in this case. So let's get started with dot cells, because that is the focus of this series, of course. Let's just put a simple command in here. So what is this command going to do? You might want to stop the video and think about it. What is the command going to do? I'm going to hit the F5 key. We can see we've selected cell A1. So this cells technique can help us select a particular cell, do something to a particular cell. That's useful. What if we change this row index number? Then you can see we're now selecting the 2nd cell, changing the row index number again. We're now selecting the 5th cell. So maybe you're beginning to see in your mind how this might work. What other technique, super powerful technique you'll always see on the channel, are we going to combine with cells to create this beautiful synergy and to get things working? Stop the video. You might want to think about that. Well, we're dealing with a repeated instruction. We want to go through all of the cells and repeat an instruction, which is this row a multiple of 6 row? That's our basic concept. So we've got a repeated instruction. That means a loop. So let's put a loop in now. We could use lots of different types of loops to do this. I'm going to use a for next loop. So for next, we're going to need a variable, dim counter as integer, informative variable name there. And then we're going to specify the scope of this loop. So for counter equals 1, 2. And then what's the end of the loop? Well, we're just going to hard code a value for the time being. Control and down arrow, keyboard shortcut, takes us to the bottom of the data set. And we can see row 5326 is the last row. Now for the time being, we're just going to hard code that value. Maybe we'll look at the end of the video, maybe, depends how long the video is, at how we could make this dynamic, find the end of the data set. So if we lost some data or gained some data, the routine would still work smoothly. Or that might be something you want to look at yourself, and then close the loop here. Okay, so we've got the loop around this cells technique. It's not going to do anything yet. If I just go through the loop now, hitting the F8 key, you can see nothing's really happening. So what small but critically important change do we need to make to this line of code to get this mechanism working? Stop the video and have a think about that. So you'll see this technique, this particular combination on the channel lots and lots. If you're a fan of the channel, hopefully you've got it. So for the row index value here, we're going to substitute the name of the variable. Now what's going to happen? You can go to debug and step through the code. I'm on the PC, I'm going to use the F8 key, just hitting the F8 key and just stepping through the code now. Now we've got this beautiful effect. Magic never fully wears off. Although I'm working on this kind of thing every day, it's still good fun getting it working for the first time. What's actually happening though? Well, the value of counter increases by 1 each time we go through the loop. That's the way the for next loop works. And because we put the variable in the row index part of the cells technique, we're just working through the database. So this basic structure we've now got. We're able to loop through the database using a loop and dot cells. But we want to do lots more than that. We're just taking small steps with this task at the moment. So we need a line of code to say to VBA if this row number is a multiple of 6. So again, stop the video. What tools do you have at your disposal to do that? We have one specific tool. If you've checked out the Excel VBA Advent Calendar video I did back in December, you should know which tool to use. Have you got it? Well, we're going to use mod to do this. And we're going to say if counter mod 6. So this line of code means if the value before mod is a multiple of 6, then we want to do something. So it's exactly what we want here. And then we're going to say then, complete the conditional statement. Now, rather than just selecting the cell, let's flash up a message box with the address of the cell. So just put the message box code in here. And let's change the property here to address. Okay. So in English or in your native language, you should be able to describe what the code is doing. This code is going through the rows. If the row is a multiple of 6, it's going to flash up a message box with the address of the cell. That's what we want to happen. Let's see if it does happen. Save the file. Control S. Hitting the F8 key now, going through the code. A1 has popped up. A2 has popped up. Okay, yeah. Not quite complete yet, this line of code. We need to say if counter mod 6 equals 0. Okay, yeah, because this counter mod 6 is going to give us the remainder when the value in counter is divided by 6. If that equals 0, then we're on a multiple of 6 row. Can't find a more concise way to say that, a multiple of 6 row. Hopefully you understand what I mean. So we've completed that line of code now. So stepping through the code, what's happening here? Well, nothing's happening yet. It's going through the rows, but it hasn't found a multiple of 6 row, but it has now, because we can see we've moved on to the second part of the conditional statement, and we've got the cell address, which is A6. So that makes sense. What's the next cell address that's going to flash up? You might want to stop the video, think about that. It's coming now. The next cell address is A12. Also a multiple of 6. Seems to be working well. What are we expecting to happen now? A18 should be the next one to flash up because that's the next multiple of 6. So this mechanism seems to be working well. So you can see we're just working through step by step, making sure each mechanism works. But we want to do more than just flash up a message box. We want to take the contents of the cell and list those contents somewhere else. Where are we going to list all of the contents of those cells? Well, we could do it on the data sheet, but what problem is that going to pose for us? Well, we know that Hugh, our customer, would like to delete the unwanted elements, would like to delete the rows that are not being used. So clearly that's going to be problematic. If we list data here, some of those rows will subsequently be deleted. So what are our options? We could create a new sheet to do this. This is a good idea in this case. So I'm just at the bottom of the Excel here, creating a new sheet, Alt-O-H-R on the PC keyboard shortcut. Check out our recent keyboard shortcuts video, by the way, if you're excited by keyboard shortcuts like I am. And we're going to say, let's just say analysis here for the sheet name. Okay, so back to the data sheet. And what are we looking at here? Let's go back to our previous view. So we're looking at, so we don't want this to happen. We don't want the message box to flash up. We want something else to happen. I'm going to make this a more complete conditional statement here. So we would like a cell on the analysis sheet to take the contents of the cell value, if we have a multiple of 6 cell. So this line of code says, if this is a multiple of 6 cell, okay, sheets analysis dot cells, let's use dot cells of course, open bracket 1 comma 1 equals, and then just to be explicit, let's put the reference in here, the sheet reference in here rather. Now we're working across multiple sheets, then it's good for us to be explicit about the sheet names to make sure we're not looking at the wrong sheet. Okay, and then we don't want the address of the cell, we want the value in the cell, so just changing the property there. Right, so what's going to happen now when we run the code again? Let's try to work it out. You might want to stop the video here. So we've said sheets analysis.cells11. What does that mean? Well, you're familiar with the dot cells concept now, so you know that means range A1, cell A1 on the analysis sheet. So we'd expect something to appear there. What's going to appear there? Well, you might want to guess that, but I think it's going to be the last value or the last row in the database that is a multiple of 6. So one of these will be a multiple of 6. The last value is going to appear in the cell. Why will it do that? Well, it will go through all of the values and write them into the cell, but it will overwrite the values. It's going to overwrite the values as it goes through the code. So we should only see the last value. Just doing a quick kind of sense check, visual check on this code. Seems to be decent. Control S to save, not shave, to save. F5 to run the code. Something has happened. And we can see, yeah, data in row 5322. So it's taken the data from row 5322, which must be a multiple of 6, and just put it in that cell. What we didn't see was that when it was going through the code, it must have been overwriting the previous values. How could we confirm that? Well, let's just step through the code here using the F8 key on the Windows PC, stepping through the code. Now, when we get to our, we can see we just got data in row 6. Going to continue stepping through the code. Row 12 is going to appear next. There it is. And then row 18 is going to appear. So it's doing that all the way until it gets to row 5322. Can you see how quickly, how fast that code was processing? Seriously, I think if you see how fast that code runs, you're never going to do anything manual in Excel again, because you'll realize the potential of Excel VBA. That's what the channel is all about. Hopefully you're feeling the power of Excel VBA. Right, so our next challenge, just working through this step by step, next challenge is to try to get the values stacked up in this column. We don't want the values to overwrite, that's not really useful. So we want the values stacked up in this column. So let's look at the code. What part of the code are we going to have to change here? What part of the code is controlling the position? Controlling the position on the analysis sheets where the data is going to appear. Well, we can see we've got sheets analysis. That's giving us a clue here. And then cells 1-1. So what can we do in here? So I'm giving you some clues here. What can we do in within the cells construct there? What can we do to get this code working? It's just one minor but critical change. It's going to take a couple of things actually, but what ideas do you have? You might want to stop the video there. Well, rather than having a hard-coded value here, let's use a variable instead. A variable is just a place to store information. And let's call it positioner. We have a video on VBA variables, by the way, just me talking to camera about VBA variables. It's just a place to store information. What information do we want to store? We want to store the position, the row on the analysis sheet where the previous or the most recent value was inputted. If we can store that information, we can then increment it up by 1, and that gives us where we want to put the current value that we're working with. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it, just follow along with me. So we've got a new positioner variable here. So again, we're going to substitute a static value for a variable and just unlock this super powerful synergy in the process. So we've got the variable in there. What's going to happen now? Now I think if you run the code now, it will create an error because this positioner variable, we haven't initialized it, so Excel will assume that it equals 0. Shall we prove that? Let's just hit the F5 key and we can see, yeah, we've got this error, which means you're asking Excel to do something impossible, often involved with positioning, selecting cells that don't exist, etc., etc. Yeah, we can see the value of positioner now is 0. I'm just hovering the pointer over the positioner variable. So we know from the previous easy video that that's not how the cells referencing technique works. So how can we fix this? Let's initialize the variable first, put a value into it, allocate a value to the variable, positioner equals 1, and then we want to increment up the value of the variable. So a very super useful, very basic construct here, x equals x plus 1, variable name equals variable name plus 1, positioner equals positioner plus 1. That's going to have the effect of increasing the value of the variable, which is going to increase our position, yeah, which is going to have the effect of going 1 row further down for each cell, for each multiple of 6 row. Okay. Again, if it's not clear, don't worry about it. Just stick with me. And let's try running this code, doing a quick visual check. All looks okay. F5 key, run the code. Again, how fast is that code? Good stuff. So what do we got? Okay, I'm going all the way down to the bottom. We go all the way down to 5322. We can see only the multiple of 6 rows are selected here. So this seems to be exactly what we're looking for. And I'm just looking through the rows, 12, 18, 24, 32. Okay, looking up from the bottom, 22, 16. Get this into your screenshot. Looking up from the bottom here, 22, 16, 10, 4, 98, 92. So I'm happy that this mechanism is picking out every 6th row. So this is a good time to take a bit of water, just review what we've done so far, because I think we're about halfway through this task. Let's go back to our client briefing, go back to Hugh's email here. So he's saying, I want to transpose every 6th element. Okay, so with this first part we've done, so taking every 6th element and then delete the unwanted elements A2 to A5 and repeat the process. Okay, so we've managed to do the first part on the analysis tab here because we've got all of these values listed from every 6th row. Now we've got to deal with deleting the rows that we don't want. You can see we're not doing that yet. We're not deleting the rows that are not every multiple of 6 rows. Now we're going to have to do some deletion. That means you've got to back up, and because if you have lots of deleted rows, it's not easy to fix that quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a backup of the data sheet. So just right click down at the bottom here. You could do this using keyboard shortcuts, of course. Move and copy, move to end and create a copy. So I've now got data 2 here, Alto HR, I'm going to call this backup. So we've now got a backup sheet. We're going to be deleting rows that could cause a lot of problems. We don't want to get caught out. So let's just back up that sheet. We can always lift it back in should we need to do so. Right, so we're now dealing with deleting rows. Now this can be a complicated thing to do in Excel VBA. Why is it complicated? Well, the complications will emerge when we're doing the code, but we've got to remember every time we delete a row, all of the row numbers for the rows below that row are going to change. That's the way it works. That's something we're going to have to look out for as we work through this code, and we'll probably come across it. How is this going to work? Well, if we have multiple of 6 row, let's put a little annotation here. This row is multiple of 6 row. We want all of those things to happen. If the row is not a multiple of 6 row, then we want to do something else. So let's put an annotation in here. If not a multiple of 6 row, then we want something else to happen here. Okay, basically we want to delete the row. Okay, just thinking in my own head how this is going to happen. Now this is, as I said, quite complicated, and what we're going to do is not going to do it in one step, but we're going to set something up that is not going to work, but is going to move us closer to getting this working. Okay. Firstly, the code to delete a row. Say sheets data. I'm not absolutely sure about this code either, so we might have to record it. Dot rows counter dot delete. Now this, intuitively seems to be exactly what we want to do. Okay, so let's go through the code. If we have a multiple of 6 row, then we want to take the data onto the analysis sheet and stack it up on the other data. If we don't have a multiple of 6 row, then we quite simply want to delete the row. Okay, but I can see a problem that's going to occur. Let's try to illustrate this. Right. And let's illustrate this by saying, what the current value of counter is. There we go. We need to externalize the value of the variable, make it clear so we can understand, so I can understand what's going on when we try to run this code. So hitting the F8 key here. So first we're in row 1, so nothing's going to happen, and we're going to delete this row. Okay, so you've got to keep an eye on here. Now at this point, I'm going to take this data because we currently have formulae in here. Yeah, you can see we've got formulae. This data is currently formally driven. I'm going to change this data to values. Data is usually values anyway, so it makes sense. So that data is now values. While I'm here, I'm going to do the same thing on the backup sheet. So I'm on the backup sheet now. Control C, Control Alt V, V gives us values here, although we've still got formulae there, so I'm not sure what's going on. Control C, Control Alt V, V gives us values there. Okay, although it's still got formulae here. So what's going on? Data in row and row. Okay. Okay. Because data in row and row. Okay. So we're just taking the values there. Getting a little bit confused by what's displayed in the formula bar here. So what's actually going on? Okay. Some kind of display issue there, which I don't fully understand, but seems to have resolved itself. So we can see in the formula bar, we now just have data rather than formulae, and the same, in the formula bar, we can see on the backup row. Now on the backup sheet, we also have just values, so we don't have those formulae. That's going to be important when we go through the code. Okay, so back to the data sheet here. I'm going to just reset the code here, and then F8 key, stepping through the code. So first we're looking at row 1. So we've got the value flashing up. That's going to help us remind us what's going on. So it's not a multiple of 6 row. So we're going to delete the row now. Okay, so now we can see row 1 has gone, or the row 1 data, more precisely, has gone, and the row 2 data has moved up. So this is going to show us the problem. So now which row are we on? Now we're on row 2, because that's how the counting variable is working. It's going to count up by 1 each time we go through the routine here. So what's going to happen now? Well, now it's going to delete row 3, which you can see there. We've lost row 3. Row 2, which we did want to delete, remains there. So clearly we have a problem there because of the way we're controlling this counter variable, the way we're managing the rows. We do have a problem there. Okay, so we need a new approach here. And maybe we could do it just by controlling the value of the counter variable, or firstly stop the video, think about what approach you might do. I think we're going to have to do this by, we could still use the counter loop, this mechanism would still work for next counter. I can see some workarounds to get this done, but it's better at this point to use a different loop. Okay, now I'm going to change this to a do until loop. Do until, so what sheet are we on here? Sheets data dot cells. Okay, now we're going to retain the counter variable. We're using it in a slightly different way. Counter1 equals then a blank cell. Okay, so now we're saying to Excel, keep going through this loop until the cell value or the cell that you get to has nothing in it. So this particular approach assumes that you don't have any gaps in the data. If you did have gaps in the data, then there's other possible approaches that would work. We're going to assume no gaps in the data here. Before we go any further, I'm just going to copy paste in the data from the backup sheet. So Control Shift down arrow, Control C, then using shortcuts to get back to the data sheet, and then just putting the values back in. Okay, so what's going to happen now? Now this is still not quite going to work, but I think we're getting closer here. I'm going to save the file here. Counter, yeah. So now we don't have a for next loop. Now if we have a for next loop as we had previously, the value of the variable that's working with the loop, in this case our counter variable, is automatically incremented up only if you have a for next loop. Now we've changed the type of loop here, which is going to help us complete this task, a slightly more versatile loop. But a do until loop, a do loop, is not going to increment up any variables that it's working with. That process of variable control, increasing the value of the variable in order to go down a sheet, we have to do that manually. And we've got to think about when we want to do that. Okay. So if we don't delete the cell, if we don't delete the row, then we want the counter variable to increase by 1. Okay. If we do delete the row, then we actually don't want to increase the counter value at all. Now this can kind of be counterintuitive. How are we going to get down the spreadsheet if we don't increase the value of that positioning variable? Well, we saw when we delete a row, one row disappears, all the other rows move up. Now that has the effect of pushing us down a row. So if we're deleting a row, so if we've just executed this delete line of code, we don't need to increment up the value of the counting variable. At least this is what I'm thinking is going to happen from experience. This is the way I've done it before, but it's quite difficult to understand. So if it's difficult to understand, you've got to step through the code, get the kind of setup I have here where I can see the VBA editor and the spreadsheet at the same time, then step through the code, use the cursor to hover over the variables to see their value, use a message box with a variable to externalize the value of the variable. Using all these things, you can gradually build an understanding of what's going on. Anyway, I will shut up and I will hit the F8 key. So we've initialized this positioner variable. At the same time, why don't we initialize this counting variable? Because if we have a for next loop, then we're going to say for counter equals 1 to x. So we do the initialization in that line of code. In this case, we're not doing any initialization because we're using a do until loop. So we've got to manually, if you like, initialize the variable there. So what happens here? Okay, so counter is 1 and we're in column 1, so it's looking at A1 at the moment. And it's saying, yeah, do until the value in the cell is blank, the value in the cell is not blank, so it's going to do whatever we asked it to do in the loop. Okay, the value of counter there. Do we have a multiple of 6 row? No, we don't. So we're just going to delete the row, and critically, the value of the counter variable has not incremented up. We can see because of that message box technique we're using, the value of the variable is still 1, but we've managed to delete a row. So hopefully this is going to work for us. And then, okay, the value. Okay, so we've lost row 2 now, we've lost row 3 now, and we've lost row 4. We've lost row. Okay. Right. So what we can see is, okay, yeah. So what I'm discovering is that my approach is not going to work. Okay, it's going to take some tweaking. It's going to take some tweaking to get it working. Or maybe it will work actually. Maybe it will work, but we have to separate something out here. Okay, yeah. I think we're going to have to loop through this twice. Okay, right. If we can loop through once and just take the values of the rows, then loop through again and then do the deletion, maybe this is going to work. Okay, yes, yeah, I do have an idea now for how to make this work. Okay, so we're going to reintroduce this for next loop. Okay, we've got counter there. And what was the value we wanted to go to? The value we wanted to go to is 5326 to 5326. Okay, so reintroducing this loop that we kind of got rid of. Next counter, okay. And then we want to say to Excel, yeah, we want this kind of if statement here. In fact, this I'm just going to lift this in, this if statement. Okay, there we go. And then bring this if statement, just doing some indentation there. Okay, so this line of code we don't need to increment the counter because we're using for next in this loop. But this line of code here I'm happy with. This is going to take the value and put it onto the analysis sheet. So we're happy with that. Now this we're not going to do. Yeah, this we're not going to do. Rather than doing this, we're going to just say the value in the cell, we're going to just put a D in there. Okay, we're going to mark the cell for deletion, we could say. So slightly different approach, and as you can see, I only discovered how to do it by trying to do it. So sheets data.cells value equals, no, that's not quite, yes, equals D. Okay, right. Now at this point, I'm going to take the backup data across. So go to the backup sheet here. On the backup sheet, let's copy paste this data back across. You can see the value now backing up that data on the backup sheets, and then just copying that data in. Okay, so what are we expecting to happen here? We're expecting our values to stack up on the analysis sheet. So at this point, it's good to clear out the analysis sheet here. Okay. And then back to the data sheet, back to the VBA editor. So yeah, I'm going to just put exit sub here. So we're just revisiting this technique that we built originally and then adjusted. But effectively, we're going to have two loops here. We're going to have one loop that's taking the values, then we're going to have another loop that's going to delete the values, because trying to do both of those things in the same loop, I think will be possible, but complicated. And you can see I tried to do it, couldn't do it first time. So yeah, definitely a complicated thing to do. What's an easier approach? Let's use two loops, one to take the information across, another to do the deletion. Okay, we're going to exit the sub here once we've gone through the loop. So let's see what happens. Hitting the F8 key here, hitting the F5 key to run the code. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. So we've got all of our D's in here that we did once, and then on the analysis sheet, yeah, we've managed to bring all of the data in there. Okay. So this is fine. Now I think that this is going to work for us. I'm going to have to reinitialize the counter variable here. And then, right, we don't need any of this. All we need to say is if Yep. Okay, we're going to take this line of code equals D, because you can see this is where we've using the fact that we've marked columns for deletion. You can see we've got these capital D values in here. Mark those columns for deletion. So if the column is marked for deletion, then we want, very simply, we want Excel to delete the row there. Okay. If the column is not marked for deletion, then we just want to increment up the value of the counter variable, and then I'm happy with the loop there. Take out this exit subline of code. Okay, we've got all of the routine here. So as I said, we've got the first part is, this is taking the information across, marking the columns for deletion. This code is taking the information across to the analysis sheet. This code is marking the columns for deletion. Now this code should do the deletion for us, but I'm not absolutely sure if this is going to work. So let's just see what happens. I want to run the code to this line because I don't want to have to step through all of this code 5,000 times. So I'm going to run this code to this line. I'm just going to put a breakpoint in here. So just clicking in the margin there, the breakpoint's there, F5 key. So we've run the code to the breakpoint. Now what's going to happen here? Okay, the value of counter is 1. I'm happy with that. Now it'll be looking at cell A1 first. So is the value of cell A1 a D? Yes, it is. So it's going to delete the row. It's not going to increment the value of counter up. I'm just going to complete this line of code here. Complete this line of code here. Counter equals counter plus 1. There we go. Okay. Right, we just lost a single line of code there. We lost a single line of data there. Okay, I'm going to pull all of the data in again from the backup sheets. What's happened there? No, that's okay. This is our original data on the backup sheet. Control C to copy it and Control V to bring it in. So I'm going to run the whole routine again. See, we've got a breakpoint in here. It's going to stop the code. Save the file, Control S, F5 key to run the code. And we can see on the analysis sheet, yes, all of our values are there. And so we can run the code from here using the F8 key. Okay, so we deleted 1 row, deleted 2 rows, deleted 3 rows, deleted 4 rows. Okay, deleted another row. Now we can see that the value of the cell now, counter equals 1. We can see that the value of the cell does not equal D, so we've moved on to this second part of the conditional statement. So we're not deleting anything, we're just incrementing the value of the variable up by 1. That means that the next cell we look at should be cell A2. So what are we looking at now? The value is 2. Okay, we're looking at A2. Yes, there's a D in there, so it's been deleted. Next row has been deleted, next row has been deleted, next row has been deleted. Okay, what happens now? So this row, not deleting it, now the value of the variable has been incremented up by 1. Same thing, same thing, same thing. Just hitting the F8 key. That seems to work. That seems to work as well. Okay, so what we're going to end up with, hopefully, is the same information on the data sheet as on the analysis sheet. Remember, the analysis sheet is pulling those multiple of 6 rows out, the values, and the data sheet is, well, we're deleting the rows that we don't want there. So effectively, we should end up with the same thing. I'm going to pull across the backup data again, Control C. Should write a macro to do this, really. Control Alt V and V. Okay, so we've got a data set here. My dog just gave me a big fright. Hello, hello doggy. So let's just check that all the data is in there. All of the data is in here. Just going down to the bottom. Hello, darling. Do you want to get in the shot? You can just see my dog here. She's a bit lonely because I've been looking at the computer for almost an hour now, I think. Anyway, let's just run this code. Let's see what we end up with. So we're expecting our values to appear on the analysis sheet. So I'm going to clear out the analysis sheet first. Expecting values to appear on the analysis sheet. And we're expecting the same values to appear on the data sheet as well, but we would have got there in a different way. So I'm just going to run the code here, hit the play button. What have we got? Okay, you can see it took a little while. It took a little while to run the code there. It took a bit of time. Still, the code is still going. Okay, the code is just finished now. So that took a good, 10 or 15 seconds. Now it is a bit slower on my system because I'm doing the screen recording, but interesting that. And I would want to look at improving the efficiency of that, of course. Right, so we're on the data sheet now. We've got 887 entries. We're down to row 887 here. So we're expecting to have the same thing on the analysis sheet. So have we got 887 rows here? Yes, we do have 887 rows on the analysis sheet there. So we've effectively done the same thing in two ways, which I didn't realize at the beginning of the task, but it's fine. It's all good. It's all good coding practice. We've got the same data. So on the analysis sheet, we've taken data out of the data set every sixth row and just stats it up on the analysis sheet. On the data sheet, we've deleted the rows that we don't need. Got us to the same thing. This first loop is taking the data out, putting it on a different row, onto a different sheet. And this second loop, do until loop, is taking the data and deleting the rows that we don't need. Effectively gives us the same thing. So you've got two loop examples there. We've got a for next loop and a do until loop. So you've got two different loops in the same routine there. But more importantly, we've got our dot cells technique. Dot cells, of course, is the champion. Well, it's the theme of this series. We've got various places here where dot cells is working, and you could see just to run this part of code was actually super efficient. That was running in less than a second. It was taken on my system. When we start doing the deletion, probably because we're deleting rows, things become less efficient. So there's probably some learning for us there. Rather than deleting rows, it's quicker to take the data that you want and to position it somewhere else. Deleting rows tends to be efficient, can take some time. Okay, so that's the end of the video. Let's go to the whole cam view. Well done for making it to the end. If you did, you can see how I worked through that task. With these application videos, they're not meant to be super clean presentation. I just do the task as I would do it, in my day-to-day work when I'm working with VBA. Hopefully you felt the power of the technique. This dot cells technique, super powerful. You can see how you can combine it with variable really easily, combine it with those variables to get lots and lots of work done. So the next video in the series, next week, we're going to go back to the short play videos, 5 or 10 minutes. We're going to be digging further into this dot cells technique. The week after that, we're kind of alternating the videos. We're going to have another application video where we'll be getting deep into the code. Okay, I'm Chris from Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions. Really appreciate it if you give this video a like. If it's helped you, give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you in another video on the channel. Take care.